some churches, instead of pivoting, they're just
double down,
beating people and guilting them into, hey, you got to give more. You got to give more. You got to give more. And I have a saying that you cannot make a withdrawal without first making a deposit.
Here's reason number 2, self-directed spirituality. People are looking less to churches and leaders to help them grow spiritually and more to other options. I mean, think about it. We live in an era where no parent makes a visit to a doctor's office without having first Googled the symptoms of a child's illness and got a recommended course of treatment for the doctor. Just ask any family physician. Kind of drives the doctors nuts. But when was the last time, okay, forget medicine for a minute. When was the last time you bought a car without completely researching it online? Well, believe it or not, people are doing the same thing with their faith. In an age where we have access to everything, more and more people are self-directing their spirituality, and that is for better and for worse. Another characteristic of the postmodern mind is declining trust and reliance on organizations and institutions. The church, in a lot of people's mind, is seen as just another institution. Now, I don't actually believe that's what the church is. I think it's a movement. I think it's from Christ. It's not an institution. But if you look at it, that's what a lot of people think. And some churches behave like an institution. And the postmodern mind instinctively moves away from it as a result.
Self-directed spirituality. That's a mouthful.
That's heavy. Speaking as a church, as an organization, not as an organism, the church has dropped the ball numerous times. And trust that has been given to leaders has been mishandled. So what results from that after years and years and decades of that happening, nobody's going to highlight the churches that do it well, that steward over the people that they were entrusted with and help them through difficulties in their life and help them develop all that. That doesn't get any news coverage, right? That doesn't get any retweets and shares. But what does is the negative stuff that happens. And when that happens, that perception grows that is the fullness of what the church does. Like, people get misused, they get abused financially, physically, emotionally, manipulated, all that stuff. So now what somebody's done is what is create safety. How could I approach God and live for God without the impact of somebody's misstep impacting me? All right? Because I have seen it firsthand how someone who is influential and a faith leader who has made impact in people's lives falls to a flaw in their character and did things that were either unbecoming or flat out illegal. And now the people who saw them as this pristine conduit through which God communicated and inspired are now thrown for a loop. Like, no, some people lose their faith that way. So I think that's a self-preservation thing where now, no, I'm not going to get it straight from you because I know you're as frail as I am. So I'm not going to esteem you at all. And I'm going to go get it myself. And I'm going to kind of say, okay, there's a thing called cafeteria Catholic, where you're a Catholic, but you go in and you're like, okay, I'll take this. No, I don't believe in that. No, sacrament here. No, I don't do that. And I'll do this. And that's coming over in the evangelical Protestant world where they're like, okay, yes, I'll tithe, but it doesn't have to be 10%. If I can't afford 10% and my family's going to suffer, I'm going to give out of the abundance of my heart. And sometimes it's going to be 10%, sometimes it's going to be 12, sometimes it's going to be 5, sometimes it's going to be 0. And that is something that the old church can't really jive with, because the organization is run based on the generosity and the giving of the congregants. And some churches, instead of pivoting, they're just
double down,
beating people and guilting them into, hey, you got to give more, you got to give more, you got to give more. And I have a saying that you cannot make a withdrawal without first making a deposit.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're not making withdrawal, or they're trying to make more withdrawals than they are deposits. And people aren't growing, and they're not developing, and they're not maturing, but they're continuing to give. And there's a thing that's called giver's fatigue.
Yeah.
So all that comes together for a perfect storm of, no, I'm going to get a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And I'm going to bring it and try to see if it flows with and agrees with the Bible. And if it does, then I'm going with it. And you're not the only person that's feeding me spiritually.
Even in a more like practical way, like let's say, someone is like, I really want to learn how to pray. I really want to learn how to pray. You can Google and find a ton of resources, right? That can help you learn how to pray. And you can decide which one works for you, which one you resonate with. But you can find like specific ministries online that are like, yo, we're just here to help you learn how to pray. And they probably have their own community. They have their own content.
Of intercessory prayers, unite.
Right. They have all of the tools and things that's going to help you specifically learn how to pray. If you want to really learn the Bible, you're like, man, I'm really wanting to like understand the Bible. There are resources, there are communities, there's Patreon that will specifically show you like, yo, we're going to study, how to study, how to go about it, like really understanding it. You can get mentored in that, all of those different things. I mean, the list goes on and on. There are so many different resources out there now that can help you get the things that you're really looking for, that it requires the current church to really look at, how are we like adapting to these new people? Because a pastor can preach a message and you can go look up that similar message preached from multiple different vantage points and then realize, oh, wow, he didn't cover this text when he was preaching about that. He didn't cover this, like tithing's a big one, right? Like you could go and find all this resource on tithing, and there's a lot of people who be like, man, the tithing's not for today, blah, blah, blah. You could go and they give legitimate, like layered evidence that shows you, and you're like, whoa, that's not how I was taught. So it's just, it requires a different type of leader now to be able to lead people and overcome, not necessarily, you should not position yourself as like a anti-internet, going.
Some people do that. Some people make the mistake of doing that and saying, everything that you hear outside of me is heresy.
And that's where you should, I've actually heard the same guy who's talking say that you should go from being like giving all of the content to curating the content, being like a place where the content can come together. You can give multiple resources to your people as opposed to just being the sole authority on everything. Because if you try to do that now, you're going to end up just wearing yourself out, because they're going to realize, one, that you don't know what you're talking about everything.
Yeah, nobody knows everything about everything. And some people are still pretending to be that instead of being transparent and saying, look, I'm on a faith journey just like you are. God has called me and purposed me to lead you through. So follow me as I follow Christ.
And being able to help people to navigate all of the information that we have, not simply just bashing everybody who doesn't agree with you.
Yeah.
And you should be able to say, and I really believe this, you should be able to say, this is my opinion on the text.
Yeah.
and saying this is what whenever I hear somebody say this is what the text means, I'm already shut off. Because there are so many, no, seriously, like there are so many interpretations of that same text to be able to say this is what the text means is wild. Like that's just there's a level of arrogance that brings that. I should be comfortable enough in my understanding of scripture, the way that I've studied. I should be able to say, listen, I'm not going to say this is the only way you can believe this, but based off of my study, this is what I believe. Even Paul said that. He said,
here's my, line upon line.
Paul said when he was talking to the Corinthians, there was a time he said, this is just my opinion.